Welcome guys to my newest faction guide. This time we take a closer look on the High Elves and the Dark Elves. So this is a combined faction guide, one big faction guide, but of course split it in two different parts. So this here is part one. You're going to see the High Elves first, and directly after that you are going to see the Dark Elves in every detail. So I decided to do a faction guide with both factions because of the latest DLC, the Queen and the Crown. So we get a lot of new units, regiments of renown, lords and all that stuff. So a lot of stuff to talk about, and I think this is you get a lot of information in this faction guides over here. And of course I wanted to do this faction guide over here because I wanted to jump right onto the hype train also. So as I already mentioned, we are going to start with the High Elves first, with the strengths and the weaknesses as always, and directly after that we take a closer look on the complete army roster, a detailed look on every unit, what is new, what is good, what is not so good. So I think you get a lot of information out of that. And after that I'm going to show you 2 or 3 competitive builds for your own gameplay. So a lot of information over here, and as I already mentioned in the part 2, you are going to see all about the Dark Elves, so make sure that you also check this out. So anyway, let's directly start with the strengths and weaknesses. Thank you as always for tuning in. Let me know what you think in the comments. Give me a thumb up if you like what you see. And yeah, nothing more to say about that. Let's directly start with the strengths and the weaknesses. So let's talk about the strengths and the weaknesses, and yeah, let's begin with the strengths, I would say. So overall I would say the biggest strength of the High Elves is the fact that the complete army roster is quite high tier, quite elite. A lot of very elite units, a lot of high tier units in the roster, and this is a very important fact. A lot of AP damage over there. We have the White Lions of Grace, we have the Phoenix Guard, we have the Swordsmasters of Hood, all that stuff, very elite stuff, causing a lot of armor piercing damage, and this is the most important characteristic, I would say. So the next point on the list is martial prowess or martial mastery. So both abilities are very unique and very important characteristics for the High Elves. So for example, if we take a look on martial prowess, this ability gives your units an additional melee defense by 12 and a melee attack by 2. It gets disabled when your unit goes under 50% of the hit points. So over 50% it is enabled, less than 50% it is disabled. Martial mastery is the stronger ability, but it does overall the same, but we have here a melee defense by plus 12 and a melee attack by plus 8, so much more melee attack. So for example, the Dragon Princes have martial mastery, but overall the most units have martial prowess. This is a quite unique characteristic, so all your units perform much better if they are over 50% of the hit points. They get I would say a quite huge buff on the melee stats. So the next points are the heroes and the lords. So we have very strong heroes and very strong lords, very competitive ones. For example, we have the Lawmaster of Hood, we have the Noble, we have Tyrion, we have Tactless. So overall very strong and very competitive lords and heroes, and I would count this as an advantage for the High Elves. A very important point is that the High Elves have in the most cases the aerial threat, because there are really good flying units available, all these dragons, the phoenixes and all that stuff, and it is with some builds really possible to bring several flying units to the battlefields. For example, you can sit your prince on a sun dragon and you can bring an additional sun dragon to the battlefield. You will see one of these builds in my competitive build section later in this video. So it is really possible, and with several flying units it is really dangerous for your opponent in the air. But there is light, there is shadow, so let's talk about the cons. So the biggest disadvantage is by far, in my opinion, that their units are quite pricey. They, as I said, they are quite high tier, quite elite, but also they have quite decent prices. And the problem over here is that you are in most cases not able to bring a lot of units to the battlefield. So you have in the most cases a very small and tiny army. And as all of you know, the problem over here is, of course, with a tiny army you get flanked very easy. It's very easy to control your army for your opponent, and a tiny army is not an advantage, and this is a little problem because your opponent can control your army really easy with cavalry, or much easier with cavalry and magic and all that stuff. And that includes, of course, the fact that you have also not a really big selection out of different units on the battlefield. So in most cases you have a very small selection of different units on the battlefield, and your opponent is really able then to react to your army in the best way possible, because he will probably guess what you are going to bring against his faction, and this is a disadvantage. And as I already mentioned, there are not many cheap options on the roster. So for example, on the infantry roster, the spearmen are the cheapest unit for 500 credits, and that is not even cheap. So against factions that are able to bring a lot of units to the battlefield, like the greenskins and the Skaven, this fact can be a disadvantage. I wouldn't really say that the next point is really a disadvantage after the latest DLC with the Queen and the Crown. So we have overall we had a very small unit selection. Meanwhile, with the latest DLC we have more units, for example a lot of Regiment of Renown, but overall I would still say the unit selection without the Regiments of Renown is not really big. So we have just a few infantry units, and this can be a disadvantage also here, cause your opponent will probably guess what you are going to bring to the battlefield, and this can be as a little disadvantage. So as I said, I wouldn't really say that's actually a big point, but it's still worth to be mentioned. The last point on the list of the disadvantages is, in my opinion, still a little lacking AP missile damage. Of course, we have the Sisters of Avalon, but they are quite pricey. So on your low-cost area, you can say, or the low-cost range, there's no missile infantry with AP damage available, and this is still a little disadvantage. Also, the artillery is not the best from the High Elves. There's just one unit, the Eagle Claw Bolt Thrower, available, and it's, in my opinion, not really a good artillery unit. So we have still a little lack in AP missile damage on low tier missile infantry units, because as I said, the Sisters of Avalon are quite pricey. But overall we have more advantages than disadvantages, also small advantages like the access to magical laws. So we have a quite good access to magical laws. We have the High Elves have access to the Law of Shadows, the Law of Life, the Law of Light, the Law of Heavens, and the High Elf magical lore. So quite good access to magical laws over here. And also we have good flying units with all these dragons, of course also quite pricey, but we have also these phoenixes. They are very fast and strong, so I would say there are more advantages than disadvantages over here. But anyway, let's continue over here with the army roster, and let's start with the lords. So let's start with the princess, the cheapest lord on the roster, and this lady is a hybrid weapon unit, so she is a melee expert but also a missile infantry unit, but she is overall quite weak. So the stats are overall very low amount of armor, very low weapon strength, very low amount of armor piercing missile damage. The missile damage itself is quite okay, but the stats are overall very low. Interesting is that you can deploy her on a Star Dragon or a Moon Dragon, of course also a Great Eagle and a Elven Steed, but overall she's never worth the price. The performance is horrific without a dragon or a mount, so you need a mount, and for this purpose you can pick the prince, the much better choice, because the extra charge for the prince is not much, so the princess is not worth the price in no case. Leave her out. The only thing over here that is a little advantage is that the princess is able, you can deploy the princess on a moondragon. That is not possible with the prince, but that's all. But as I said, just for the moondragon, it's not worth to pick her. So let's come to the prince, and as I already said, the prince is also able to sit on dragons. And worth to be mentioned is that both lords, both non-legendary lords, the prince and the princess, are exclusively able to sit on dragons. It's quite an interesting fact. And as I already said, the princess is able to sit on a moon dragon and a star dragon, and the prince is able to sit on a sun dragon and a star dragon. This is, in my opinion, the much more competitive choice to sit the prince on a sun dragon, because the sun dragon is much cheaper. You can deploy the sun dragon for 950 credits extra charge. And when it comes to the stats, the prince is also much better. So we have plus 30 armor, plus 15 melee defense. What is a lot of stuff. A little bit less melee attack than the princess, but not significant. But of course, we don't have to forget the prince is a melee expert. So he's no missile infantry lord or something like that. He's just a melee expert. The abilities are quite common also on the prince's side. Nothing special, but the prince is always preferable to the princess, in my opinion. Even if the princess is also a missile infantry unit, the prince is always preferable. So let's come to Alit Anar, and he is also a hybrid weapon lord, and much more. He is a missile expert, so we have a missile damage of 325, and very strong over here is the fact that he causing 250 armor piercing missile damage. What is a lot of stuff. The range is very high, we have 300, but when it comes to the melee combat, the stats are not the best. The weapon strength is really low, the amount of armor piercing damage is really low, the amount of armor is really low. Of course, he has a quite good melee attack of 65, but overall are the melee stats not the best. As I said, the missile stats, the missile damage, when it comes to the missile damage, he is much stronger. We have two very unique abilities. We have mislead, so you can do a copy of him. In the most cases, your enemy can spot what you are doing, but it's useful to interrupt enemy infantry ranks or something like that. So it's quite funny and quite unique ability in the complete game. So in some cases it can be useful. And then we have the moonbow, what causing a tremendous amount of splash damage. So also quite good ability. But overall, in my opinion, is Alit Anar not a competitive pick. You cannot sit him on any mount. He's just on foot. As I said, in melee combat, not really good. It's quite easy to snipe him out with other heroes and lords. And as I said, just for the missile damage, it's not worth to bring, is my opinion. Even if the price is quite okay, we have a price of about 1,500 credits. It depends what you are going to pick of his abilities. But as I said, overall, it's not worth to bring him, in my opinion. You can leave him out. So let's continue with Tyrion, and Tyrion is the strongest lord of the complete game when it comes to a humanoid melee expert on foot, because he has quite incredible stats. We have, for example, a melee attack of 77, nearly 80, and this is the highest melee attack among all lords. We have a melee defense of 60, the weapon strength is nearly 500, in fact 490. The amount of armor piercing damage is 220, and he has a max armor of 125, so incredible high stats over here. His abilities are overall nothing special in there. Of course, we have Sunfang, what is quite nice, but overall nothing special. But you can sit him on a horse, on his legendary horse called Malhandir, and then he is much steadier, and also, of course, you get a lot of mobility. Tyrion is a perfect duelist, very good in sniping out or in killing enemy lords and heroes, and also large entities. Even if he has no anti-large bonus, don't matter, because his stats are overall perfect. And yeah, but he's designed to fight single entities, of course, not infantry groups or something like that. He's perfect in fighting single entities. He's very cost efficient, because you can deploy him on Malhandir for about 2,000 credits, depends which abilities you are going to enable, but a very cost efficient lord, very high performance, and nothing more to say about that. So let's come to Alariel the Radiant, this new lord from the Queen and the Crown DLC, and she is a mighty spellcaster. She is using a mix out of the Lore of Light, the Lore of Life, and the High Elf magical lore, and she has also some quite good abilities, for example Star of Avalon, that replenishes the hit points of your combatants, and she's able to sit on an Elven steed, a Batted Itilmar steed, and a Great Eagle. She's quite cost efficient, so you can deploy her on an Elven steed with several spells for about 1800 credits. She's on the same price level like Teclis. So Teclis has of course other spells in his spellbook, different spells in his spellbook, so you can decide which lord is more suitable for you for your matchup and which spells do you need actually. And yeah, nothing more to say about that. I would say she's a competitive lord and nearly on the level like Teclis. So let's talk about Teclis, and Teclis is the most frequently used lord on the High Elf roster, I would say, cause he is a mighty spellcaster and he's quite cheap. So we have a lot of popular spells in his spellbook like Flock of Doom, Flaming Sword of Ruin, or Net of Amintok, and also very good abilities like Bound Fiery Convocation, and you can deploy him on a battered Itilmar street with a few spells and abilities for about 1200 to 1500 credits, and this is very cheap for that performance output, and for this reason he's a very competitive lord. So not much more to talk about. Tyrion's brother Teclis is a very mighty lord, and as I said, you can decide which spells are more suitable for you from Elariel or from Teclis. It depends of course on the matchup and your gameplay, and we have a few quite competitive lords. We have the Prince on a Dragon, we have Tyrion and Elariel and Teclis, but when it comes to the cost efficiency, I would still say Teclis is the most efficient or the most competitive pick. Of course you cannot compare him with melee experts like Tyrion, but I would say he's quite a competitive pick in many matchups. So let's talk about the heroes, and let's start with the Noble. And the Noble is a very good, a very strong, a very important hero, cause he is anti-large and he has a weapon strength of 340 and a bonus versus large of 35, and this is a lot of stuff. Also the amount of armor piercing damage of 220 is very high. We have a very good melee attack, very good melee defense, the amount of armor is good, so very strong stats overall. Nothing more to say about that. As I said, he's anti-large, he has a charge defense against large foes, and he is quite cost efficient. So you can deploy him on a Batted Itilmar steed for 950 credits, what is not really much for that performance. And you have also other options on a Great Eagle, then you get no bonus whatsoever, and on the Itilmar chariot he will get a bonus versus infantry. So on a chariot he will lose his bonus versus large, and therefore he will get a bonus versus infantry of 20. But of course the most competitive way to bring him to the battlefield is on a Batted Itilmar steed for 950 credits without any abilities, and this is quite a strong performance, quite a strong lord over here. So let's come to the Handmaiden of the Everqueen, and she is declared as a hybrid weapon specialist, and she has actually quite good melee stats. So we have a melee attack of 40, a melee defense of 52, the weapon strength of 360 is good, the amount of armor piercing damage of 110 is okay, but she has a bonus versus large. She's anti-large when it comes to the melee combat. We have a bonus over here of 35. Unfortunately, she has no bonus with her missile damage. So overall I would say she's better in melee combat than with her missiles. Of course she's causing magical attacks and flaming attacks with her missiles, but the missile damage overall is not the best. They are better lords with as missile lords. And yeah, cause the missile damage is not the highest, so we have just 220, about 220, and the amount of armor piercing missile damage is 125. That is okay, but I would say far away from perfect. You can sit here on an Elven steed and a Batted Itilmar steed. She has quite common abilities, nothing special I would say. But overall she is quite pricey, so for about 1100 credits you can deploy here, and on a Elven steed much more expensive, so 1200 to 1300, it depends. So in most cases I wouldn't say that she is a competitive pick, because in this case you will always prefer the noble before the handmaiden of the Everqueen. So let's come to the spellcaster, and we have two new spellcasters since the Crown and the Queen and the Crown DLC. We have now a spellcaster with the Law of Life and the Law of Shadows. So overall we have access to the Law of Shadows, the Law of High Elf Magical Lore, the Law of Life, the Law of Light, and the Law of Heaven. So very good access to different magical laws. So nothing more to say about this, but in most cases if you're going to bring Tactless or Alariel, you won't need a additional spellcaster. Of course, if you take a prince on a dragon or Tyrion, it's worth to bring a spellcaster. So nothing more to say about that. Good selection of different spellcaster over here. So last but not least, the Lawmaster of Hoed. And the Lawmaster of Hoed is a spellcaster and a melee expert, I would say. So we have an amount of armor of 90, quite good melee attack of 55, quite good stats overall, weapon strength is okay. The amount of armor piercing damage is significantly high, so we have 235, and we have a bonus versus infantry of 16. The Lawmaster of Hoed is designed to fight in enemy infantry ranks. This is his purpose, and he has quite good spells, also a good selection. We have, for example, Shame's Burning Gaze, we have Spirit Leech, and Earthblood, and yeah, quite a good selection out of different spells, but therefore he's quite pricey and not able to sit on a mount. So with one or two selected spells and abilities you are going to pay about 1200 or 1300 credits, and this is quite a lot of stuff, even if he is a anti-infantry specialist that causing a very good amount of armor piercing damage. The advantage is that he is the only unit that is able to cast Spirit Leech, and as I said, in some cases to have an anti-infantry specialist is quite good. So as I said, in some cases it's worth to bring him, but not in all, because he's quite pricey and there are other tools. So let's talk about the infantry, and let's start with the spearmen. And the spearmen are really the base unit, the elementary unit of the High Elves, because if you want to increase your amount of units in your army, there is only one option available, the spearmen. But they are actually quite pricey. So for a low tier unit, they have a relatively high price of 500 credits. So if we compare the stats, for example, to the stats of the Empire Spearmen, we can see that the Empire Spearmen are much cheaper with 300 credits and have more hit points. But of course, we have martial prowess on the High Elf Spearmen, and we have a silver shield. And this is the most important fact, in my opinion, that the High Elf Spearmen have a silver shield. They are well designed as a frontline unit, and as I said, are really a base unit for your army core, even if they are quite expensive, because you don't have any other option on this price level. So there's also a Regiment of Renown available, the Scions of Matline. I hope I pronounced this right. These guys have a much higher melee defense of 51, but overall the stats are not really different. But we have a magical aura of protection that gives nearby allies plus 12% damage resistance, and this is a quite interesting fact. So in some cases this can really pay off. Even if the extra charge is quite high, we have an extra charge of 350 credits, 850 credits overall for this unit. But as I said, just because of the stats, it wouldn't be worth to bring them or to pay the extra charge. But we have, as I said, this aura of protection, and for that purpose, if you use this unit right, in the correct way, on the correct position on the battlefield, this can really pay off. So I would really say in some cases these guys are really worth to bring to the battlefield, if you use them in the correct way, of course. So let's come to the White Lions of Grace, and these guys are the cheapest option on the roster when it comes to AP damage, because these guys have a quite good amount of armor piercing damage of 25, a good amount of armor with 90, a good amount of melee attack with 36, and the price for one unit is 800 credits, what is really cost efficient. They are really good performance for that price. They have this line clock also, so they have a protection against regular and magical missile attacks, and they are forest striders, so they get a melee attack buff if they are fighting in forests. Therefore the melee defense is quite low with 24. They have no shield whatsoever, but overall, as I said, a huge performance output for that price, so really cost efficient and in a mid-range area, so you need White Lions of Grace in many matchups. Because there are not many cheap options available on the infantry roster, and these guys are, regarding their performance, relatively cheap. And there is also a Regiment of Renown available since the Queen and the Crown DLC, the Pure Man Company. I hope I pronounced this right. And these guys have a better melee defense, a better melee attack. But quite interesting over here is that these guys have armor sundering by -30, what is quite a lot of stuff. And these guys have also this Guardian ability that provides physical resistance by plus 18% over here, and this is a lot of stuff. So overall a huge performance, but also the price is quite huge, so we have an extra charge of 300 credits regarding the normal White Lions of Grace, so overall a price of 1100 credits. So if you take care of them, if you play with them in the right position in your army build, they can pay off, but not every time, so it depends. In some cases yes, in others not. So let's come to the high tier units like the Swordmasters of Hood, and you can deploy one group for 1300 credits, a lot of stuff, but also the performance is really high, really good. So we have the same amount of armor piercing damage like on the White Lions of Grace with 25, but therefore we have on the Swordmasters of Hood a bonus versus infantry of 14, and this can really make a difference in some matches, in some fights. And they have a really good melee attack of 46, a melee defense of 36, what is quite good. The amount of armor is 90, that is okay. They have a bronze shield actually. I'm not sure what's going on, because you can see these guys don't have any shield, but they are declared with a bronze shield, and they have this deflect shots ability that will deflect some arrows, so you are not getting too much damage from enemy missile fire. Maybe this is meant with the shield, but as you can see they don't have any shield on their skin, but as I said they are declared with one shield. So overall a very pricey unit. You have to be careful, take care of Fate of Beulah and all that stuff, because they get erased, eliminated with magic really fast. So in some cases it's worth to bring more White Lions of Grace instead, Swordmasters of Hood, but it depends. It's always risky to bring a unit with such a high price, but yeah, nothing more to say about that. So let's talk about the Phoenix Guard, and the Phoenix Guard is the strongest anti-large infantry unit of the complete game, and they have also a very high price of 1400 credits, but the stats are superior. We have a high amount of armor with 100, the melee attack of 38 is good, the melee defense with 40 is good, the weapon strength with 36 is good. The amount of armor piercing damage is 25, but they have a bonus versus large of 20, so superior stats, especially when it comes to fights against large entities. But also here it's very risky to bring a infantry unit with such a high price to the battlefield, so also here it depends. In some cases maybe one unit are worth the price, but two it's much expensive, and you dramatically reduce the amount of units in your army. A very important fact is that the Phoenix Guard has a physical resistance of 30%, and this is a lot of stuff, so it's incredibly difficult for normal infantry units or especially monsters to kill the Phoenix Guard on a normal way, but they are still very weak to magic. But they have also, instead of martial prowess, martial mastery, so incredible high stats over here and very good features, but still they are weak to magic, and as I said, it's always dangerous. There's also a regiment of renown available, the Keeper of the Flames, and these guys are much more expensive, so we have an overall price of 1650 credits, what is a lot of stuff. Therefore they have a higher melee defense of 53, what is also a lot of stuff, and they're causing magical attacks, but the rest is the same, so I wouldn't say it's worth to bring the Keepers of the Flame to pay the extra charge. As I said, it's too dangerous to spend so much money on one infantry unit. So let's come to the missile infantry, and let's start with the base unit, the elementary unit, the archers over here. And the archers are for 475 credits, quite cost efficient, even if they have really a lack in armor piercing missile damage. So they have just a AP missile damage of 3, what is very low, but therefore they have a huge missile range of 180. So overall, as I said, as a cheap archer unit, these guys perform especially good against low tier factions like Skaven Greenskin. With all these low tier units with not a huge amount of armor, that is their strengths in this matchups. These guys can really pay off, but when it comes to AP damage, they are quite useless. Just for reference, there's also a light armor version available, but you can leave this out completely. It's just a little bit extra charge, 50 extra charge, so not really much, but as I said, they are still quite weak in melee combat, so save your money and take the normal archers. So let's talk about the Lorthan Seaguard, and these guys are anti-large, so they are mixed out of a spearman unit and an archer unit, and they have in their weapon strength a bonus versus large of 16. So it's not so easy for warhounds and low tier cavalry to kill them. Not even easy, it's in most cases not possible, so a group of warhounds is not able to kill these Lorthan Seaguard. So if you are facing up against factions that are probably bring a lot of low tier cavalry, warhounds and all that stuff to the battlefield, the Lorthan Seaguard can defend themselves, and for this purpose they are really good and really strong. And the price is 650 credits, so it's more than the price of the archers, of course, but as I said, in many matchups they really pay off. So there's also a shielded version available in this, and in this case you can think about to bring them, cause these guys are designed for defending themselves in melee combats, so a shield is a additional advantage. I wouldn't say it's always worth to bring a Lorthan Seaguard with shields. The normal Lorthan Seaguard also pay off, but you can pay this 100 extra charge, credit extra charge, to bring this shielded version. So there's also a regiment of renown version available, the Storm Riders, and these guys are, you can deploy one group for an extra charge of 200 credits, and they have better melee stats, but not significant, I would say. The most important fact over here is that these guys are able to fire whilst moving. But this is, in my opinion, a disadvantage in this case, because you don't want to walk around all the time. Lorthan Seaguard have a charge defense against large foes, and this charge defense should trigger when a large unit charges against them, so running around is counterproductive, and this is not even the shielded version, so I would leave these guys out completely. In no case, I would never bring them to the battlefield. So let's talk about the Shadow Warriors, and these guys have Stalk. You can deploy them in a vanguard position, and also they have a range of 180, so overall quite good stats. The missile damage is also without any significant armor piercing missile damage. So they are designed for a guerrilla tactic, you can say. The price is 850 credits, so they are very high priced in my opinion. The melee stats are very... Of course, they are not really bad for a missile infantry unit, but don't expect any wonders. These guys are also not designed to fight in melee combat. Maybe they win against some goblins, but nothing more. But quite interesting is they can fire whilst moving. But overall, I wouldn't say it's worth to bring them. If you have any special tactic or something like that, yeah, then maybe it is worth to bring them. But in other cases, I would leave them out. So there's also a regiment of renown version available, the Grey. And these guys have a little bit better melee stats, a higher missile damage, but not significant. The most important fact is that these guys have snipes, so they remain hidden while firing. But also a very important fact is that the extra charge for these guys is 450, and this is a lot of stuff. So even if you are a master ambusher, it's never worth to bring them to the battlefield. In no case. So it's, I mean, give me a break. 1,300 credits for a little bit better stats overall, and this snipe ability, it's not worth it. So let's talk about the Sisters of Avalon, and this is, in my opinion, one of the most important units from the new Queen in the Crown DLC, cause these ladies causing armor-piercing missile damage, the first unit on the missile infantry roster. And we have an amount of 16, what is very good. And these ladies causing magical and flaming attacks with their missiles, and even the melee stats are really good. We have a quite good melee attack and melee defense. Also the weapon strength is quite decent for a missile infantry unit. So overall, quite good stats. The only disadvantage is the price. So we have a price of 1,100 credits, what is quite high. So, but if you need AP missile damage, you have no other choice. So I think this is quite an important unit. And as I said, if you need AP missile damage, this is your pick. There's also a Regiment of Renown version available, the Ever Queen's Court Guards. And these ladies have better melee stats and a little bit higher missile damage. The amount of armor-piercing missile damage is the same. But they have in addition this Encourage ability, what is quite good. But overall the extra charge is 200 credits, and I wouldn't say it's worth the price. It's very expensive, too expensive. And as I said, the performance boost is not so much, and I wouldn't pay the 200 credits extra charge. Even if you get this Encourage ability, it's not worth it. So let's start with the cavalry, and let's begin with the Illyrian Weavers, and these guys are a low tier cavalry unit. They have quite a low weapon strength. The melee stats are not the best. Even the charge bonus is very low. But even though I would say they are in some cases worth to bring, even if the price is also not really cheap for 600 credits. Most other factions have low tier cavalry available for about 400 credits, so 600 credits is also not really cheap, but I still would say in some cases they are worth to bring to the battlefield against low tier factions like Greenskins, Cavemen and stuff like that. They are quite fast and they are able to get deployed in the vanguard position, and they have still martial prowess. So let's talk about the Silver Helms, and the Silver Helms are a mid-range, between low tier and mid-range cavalry unit. They have much better stats than the Illyrian Weavers, nearly on every point, so much more hit points, plus 50 armor, what is quite a lot of stuff. So the most important points over here are the armor and the charge bonus. So we have plus 20 charge bonus, plus 50 armor, and plus 400 hit points, and this is quite a lot. But even though the price is also quite much more, so we have 900 credits, so I would say in most cases it's not worth to bring the Silver Helms. I'm not a fan of them. I will pick in most cases Illyrian Weavers or Dragon Princes, but Silver Helms are not so efficient in my opinion. So there's also a shielded version available, but nothing special over here, plus 8 melee defense for 100 extra charge. So as I said, I'm not a big fan of Silver Helms, and in most cases I bring Illyrian Weavers or Dragon Princes to the battlefield. Silver Helms are not really cost efficient in my opinion, but also not really bad, so if you want to play with them, pick them. I personally leave them out. So let's talk about the Itilma chariot, and these chariots are in my opinion quite okay. They have quite good stats, a weapon strength of 54, armor piercing damage of 16, what is quite good, quite okay. For a unit that is not declared as an AP unit. We have a bonus versus infantry of 24, the charge bonus is 70, we have a huge armor of 110. So overall, of course, they are not good as the Gorby's chariot and stuff like that, but they perform still quite decent, and for 1,100 credits, in my opinion, in some cases it's worth to bring them. This is okay. So they are one of the better chariots of the game. They are clearly worse chariots on other factions available, so I would say this is okay. Of course, you don't have to expect any wonders, but it's okay, I would say. So let's talk about a very special unit, the Dragon Princes. And the Dragon Princes are overall a very good cavalry unit, but we have some problems over here. They have really they are very low on AP damage, so they have just 12, and also they don't have any bonus versus large, and this is a little problem against very heavily armored units. They perform very bad, and also against massive large armored units the performance is also really bad, so this is a little problem. But the other stats, the amount of armor of 110 is quite good, the weapon strength overall is okay, the charge bonus with 80 is very good, then we have martial mastery, then we have a physical resistance of 25%, so overall very good stats on all other points. So as I said, just against very heavily armored targets and large entities that are armored, their performance is really bad, but against everything other they perform really superior. The problem is also that they have a quite high price from 1450 credits, so in some matchups they are really worth to bring to the battlefield, but not in all, clearly not in all. Also worth to be mentioned is that these guys have a fire resistance of 70%. So let's come to the new Regiment of Renown version, the Fireborn. And these guys have more melee defense, plus 11, more melee attack, more leadership. But the most important thing is that they have an anti-large bonus of 18. What is really important, really strong. But we have still a very low amount of armor-piercing missile damage. The same amount like on the normal Dragon Princes of 12, so nothing new. But the biggest problem over here is the price. So we have a price of 1,900 credits, and that is not only decent, it is incredibly high. This is the highest, it's the most expensive cavalry unit of the complete game. So it's really dangerous to bring the Dragon Princes or the Fireborn to the battlefield. So in my opinion, just in some matches it's worth to bring them, in others it is too expensive. I mean, nearly 2,000 credits, one Fate of Buna and nearly 2,000 credits melting away, so it's very dangerous to bring these guys to the battlefield. Also worth to be mentioned is that these guys have also a fire resistance to fire of 70%, like on the normal Dragon Princes. So overall I would say the High Elves have a quite good at cavalry, not the best in the game, but they're still quite decent, and the selection is quite small, but even though there are some good units in there. So let's talk about the missile infantry and the missile chariots, and we begin with the Illyrian Reaver archers. So nothing special, the range is quite good, a typical missile cavalry unit. So if you want to cause some harass damage and all that stuff, the Illyrian Reaver archers are quite good. They are of course fire whilst moving. You can deploy them in the vanguard position. They have also martial prowess, even if the melee combat stats are really low. They are quite pricey in my opinion, so they are not so cost efficient for 750 credits. But if you want to do some harass damage with missile cavalry, these guys are okay. There's also a Regiment of Renown version available with better melee stats overall, better charge bonus, little bit more missile damage, but overall nothing special. But the price is special. We have 1,000 over here, so plus 250 credits. So it's, in my opinion, not worth to pick them. So let's come to the Tyrannok chariot. And this chariot, first of all, I'm not a fan of missile chariots overall. So we have a huge missile damage of 125. Also the amount of armor piercing damage is quite good, of 10. So we have 3 shots per volley. So overall stats are not bad. The range is also not bad with 165. Magical attacks, this chariot causing magical attacks with their missiles. But overall the other melee stats are much worse than the stats from the Itilmar chariot, so I wouldn't say that's worth to bring this Tyrannok chariot just because of the huge missile damage. We don't have to forget we have just three different models, so that is not really much. One shot for each model, as I said, 3 shots with 1 volley. I would leave this out completely. I would never play with the Tyrannok chariots. So the High Elves have a very good selection of flying monsters. Let's begin with the Flamespire Phoenix over here. Very good is the speed, or very strong point. We have a speed of 120, what is quite a lot. So he can chase enemy harass units and all that stuff. He causing magical and flaming attacks. The melee attack is 42, what is quite good. The melee defense with 30 is not the best, but also okay. We have a weapon strength of 330. The amount of armor piercing damage is 230, what is quite a lot, quite good. And so overall quite good stats, but we have a very low amount of armor. He has also a fire resistance of 70%, causing fear and terror. And he's attuned to magic, so he has a plus 12% damage resistance if the mana is more than 50%. And he has also an ability called Rebirth that gives you a 50% chance that he gets resurrected, or yeah, he gets his second Rebirth, you can say. And he has an ability called Wake of Fire, so he's able to throw bombs, fire bombs on enemy infantry, or stuff like that. So very good stuff over here. Everything is very, very good, and the price is 1,350 credits. And for that price, he is really cost efficient. Very good performance. In some cases, as I said, it depends on the matchup, of course, it is worth to bring him to the battlefield. So let's talk about the Frostheart Phoenix. And this fellow over here has more hit points, more armor, more weapon strength than the Flamespire Phoenix. So a lot more, I would say. So we have nearly plus 600 hit points, plus 50 armor, plus 30 weapon strength. The amount of armor piercing damage is also a little bit higher, plus 20 over here. But therefore we have less speed, so just 100 over here is still very high. He's still very on high speed, but it's less than the speed of the Flamespire Phoenix, and we have less melee attack, but not so much. He causing also magical attacks, and he has this Blizzard Aura that reduces the melee attack by 9 and the armor piercing damage by minus 10% of enemies within the range. Also, he's also attuned to magic with plus 12% damage resistance if the mana is over 50%. The extra charge is 300 credits, but we get a lot better stats when it comes to armor and weapon strength. So in some cases, it's really worth to bring the Frostheart Phoenix and to pay the extra charge. Even if I would say overall is the Flamespire Phoenix the more cost efficient solution and the more cost efficient or more competitive pick. So let's continue with the Great Eagle. And the Great Eagle, it's the same Great Eagle like from the Wood Elves. And the Great Eagle has a good amount of speed. The weapon strength is quite good on paper, so we have 390, and the amount of armor piercing is okay with 156, but overall the performance is always not really good. The Great Eagle performing not really good overall. So in some cases, to chasing enemy flying units and stuff like that maybe. But I don't know why, but the performance is always really bad from Great Eagles, so I wouldn't pick a Great Eagle at all. Maybe you can set a lot on the Great Eagle. In some cases this is a quite decent pick, but overall I would leave out the Great Eagle completely. So let's talk about the Sun Dragon. And the Sun Dragon is the cheapest dragon on the roster, so for 1,700 credits you get a massive monster over here. We have a weapon strength of 460, what is a lot. We have an amount of armor piercing damage of 325. Very huge, very strong stats over here. We have a melee attack of nearly 50, very strong. A melee defense of 44. He causing flaming attacks, of course. The amount of armor with 50 is okay, not the best. But we have also the Sun Dragon's Breath, causing tremendous amount of damage. And we have a missile resistance of 25%. So overall a huge and massive monster with superior stats, but for a quite decent price, I would say. So 1,700 credits, this is quite cost efficient, but we don't have to forget dragons are not in every matchup really the best solution. So in some matchups it's really worth to bring him, in others not. So nothing more to say about this. If you need a dragon, this is the cheapest version and the cost efficiency is quite good. So let's talk about the Moon Dragon, and the Moon Dragon has an extra charge regarding the Sun Dragon of 300, so the price is 2000 credits overall. We have plus 1000 hit points more than the Sun Dragon. We have a weapon strength of plus 60, what is a lot of stuff, and we have an amount of armor piercing damage of 380, so also a bit more over here. So overall, nothing more to say about this. He has a little bit less speed, a little bit less charge bonus. He has his Moon Dragon's breath, but overall, as I said, nothing special, better stats. So if you want a higher performance, a higher weapon strength, pick the Moon Dragon for 2000 credits. The cost efficiency is on the same level, but you have now a unit that is much more expensive, so you have to be really careful. But overall, yeah, nothing more to say about that. So let's talk about the strongest and biggest and most beautiful dragon in the complete game, the Star Dragon over here. And we have nearly on every point better stats regarding the stats of the Moon Dragon. So we have a higher amount of hit points, nearly 2000. We have more armor, plus 30 over here. We have a melee attack of 60 overall, also causing flaming attacks, of course. Better melee defense, a much higher weapon strength of 580 overall, and amount of armor piercing damage of 435. So superior stats, incredible high stats, but of course also incredible high price. So we have a price of 2400 credit, and this is quite pricey. So I would always say that it's just worth to bring this Star Dragon in combination with a Prince. Then you can deploy the Star Dragon for about 1650 credits, and you get the Lord. So just as a single unit, it is too expensive. But overall, is the Dragon very strong? Of course, his Dragon Breath is devastating. He is incredibly strong, best stats, superior. Nothing more to say about this. But as I said, he's too high priced, and just bring him in combination with a Prince. So there's just one single artillery unit available, the Eagle Club Bolt Thrower, and I already mentioned it in the beginning. I'm not a big fan of this piece of artillery, because I think the damage output is quite low. So for example, we have a missile damage of nearly 140, and this is not really much. And also the amount of armor piercing missile damage is okay with 120. Of course, we have a bonus versus large with 50, but overall this is not the best piece of artillery in the game. There are much better artillery units. And of course we have two separate applications. So one multi-shot round, so you can shoot on infantry units, and one application for shooting on single large entities. But even though, as I said, or even the missile range is not the best, 380 is okay, but even the Hell Cannon from Chaos has a higher range. So overall, this is it's really not good. Of course, we have a very cheap price. In my opinion, this is quite cheap for 700 credits, but even though, I don't like the performance, and yeah, nothing more to say about that. Yo guys, as promised, I'm going to show you 2 or 3 competitive builds, and we are going to start with build 1 over here, and this build is a creation against factions that are heavily armored, against more heavy stuff like Chaos or something like that. So let's begin. You can already see in my front line Spearmen on the side. I can always recommend to bring Spearmen, because this will increase the quantity of your army. Of course, they are not able to hold the line for a very long time against AP damage from Chaos Warriors with great weapons, or even Chosen. Of course, they get sliced and diced. But against Cavalry or low tier infantry units, they are able to hold the line for some time, or even against, of course, monsters. So I have a quite wide front line with 5 units, and in the middle over here I have Phoenix Guard, and all of you know, high performance over here, a very heavy core in the middle. And in my second line I have the more heavy stuff, so I have 2 groups of Swordsmasters of Hoet directly behind my front line, and on the sides I have white lines of Christ 2 groups. So 4 groups with a lot of AP damage directly in my second line, and you can already see all these flying units in the background. So I have 2 Sun Dragons vanilla without any lord, and my lord is a prince on a Great Eagle directly in the middle. So I have a lot of I have the aerial threat, so I have a lot of flying units, and I'm control everything in the air. And also with these dragon breaths, I'm pretty sure that this is quite devastating for the Chaos frontline in this match. The only disadvantage in this build is that I don't have any magic, but in my opinion this is a crushing build. It's not necessary. It's the plan is to crush the enemy very fast. So yeah, nothing more to say about this. I think this is a quite good build, or quite competitive build in some cases. Of course it depends on your gameplay also. At least you need a little bit micromanagement with these 2 dragons and the dragon breaths. But as I said, I spent all 12,400 credits completely to 0. Everything is used, so I think this is a quite good build. Continue over here and let's go to the second build, and this build is a creation against low tier factions, Skaven, Greenskins faction, which are able to bring a lot of units to the battlefield. So you already can see I also have a lot of units, so let's take a closer look on it. You can see I have a front line, a mix of spearmen with white lines of Grace. So I have 2 white lines of Grace over here and 3 groups of spearmen. In my second line I have additional 3 groups of white lines of Grace over here, so it is very difficult for low tier factions to handle that. Of course Greenskins have, for example, black orcs, but these guys, I have a lot of them, a lot of white lines of Grace, and these guys in this quantity they are really able to handle that, because black orcs are much more expensive, for example. Then I have 4 groups of archers over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, very cheap, causing nearly no armor piercing missile damage, as I said, but against low tier factions or very units that are very low on armor, these guys of course performing superior. And in my backline I have 2 additional groups of spearmen to protect my backline from flankings. And then I brought tacklers to the battlefield with different spells. So overall the price was 1,300 credits, 1,320 credits, with fiery Bonfiery Convocation, with Flock of Doom, with Flaming Swords of Ruin, with Net of Amentok, and with Kindle Flame. So on this, as I said, on the horse, the price is 1,320 credits for all that stuff. So very good. And not far, but here with my cavalry, so I have 2 groups of Illyrian Reavers. They are able to get deployed in the vanguard position, very good against low tier factions, or factions with a lot of low tier units, let me say it like this. And we have a group of Dragon Princes over here, also quite good against Greenskin, or for example Skaven or stuff like that. So that's everything, nothing more to say about that. A huge quantity of units, so it's not easy to get overwhelmed, or don't get too easy. It's not easy, so it's not so easy for your opponent to overwhelm you with his units. So you can counter this with all your units. Also not so easy to flank your army core. So I think this is a quite good build against factions with a lot of units on the battlefield. So let's do the next build over here, and this build is a build especially for fighting and factions with a lot of large entities like the Lizardmen and stuff like that. So you are going to face up against a lot of monsters. This is your build over here. So you can see I have a front line of spearmen, 4 groups. They can negotiate the charge damage of large entities directly behind my front line. In the second line I have 2 groups of Phoenix Guard. Directly behind that I have a Sisters of Avalon, 2 groups. In the middle I have Tacklers. And Tacklers, I brought Tacklers with Flock of Doom for the infantry, Flaming Sword of Ruin, and Net of Amentok, what is quite important against large entities. To protect my Sisters of Avalon and Tactless in the middle, I have a Phoenix Guard in the back line, additional Phoenix Guards, so 3 Phoenix Guards overall, and on the right and on the left flank also a group of Spearmen to protect this box formation over here from flankings. And on each side, in addition, I have an additional Noble over here. So as you can see, one over here and one over here. So this is a massive anti-large build. Of course, you will probably struggle a little bit against infantry, a heavy infantry build, but if you think, or if you are sure that you are facing up against large entities, this will crush everything. When it comes to lizardmen, dinosaurs and all that stuff. So I think this is a quite good build, and as I said, we have the Sisters of Avalon with this huge missile range causing armor-piercing missile damage, so this is very strong. Of course, we don't have much mobility over here, just these 2 nobles on the horse, on their horses, and Tackless in the middle. So overall, of course, this build is a lack in mobility, not so much, but as I said, against large entities, the performance is superior. But anyway, as I already said in my last faction guide, these are general builds. It depends against which player you are facing against, or against on which faction. So it's not so easy to say this build is always working well against lizardmen or stuff like that. These 3 builds I already showed you now are just examples for that. But anyway, let's do a summary on the High Elves. So let's do a short summary. The High Elves are a very elite faction with a lot of high tier and elite units. After the release of the second game, however, the High Elves struggle a lot against other races because of their quite limited variation and their very expensive units. It was very easy to outmaneuver them with good tactics. But after the latest DLC with the Queen and the Crown, the High Elves get a lot of additional options to compete against their enemies. So I would say that the DLC increases the performance of the High Elves a lot, even if the new units are still quite pricey. In my opinion, are the High Elves a top tier faction with a lot of crushing power. You need either a very good army build or a very good tactic to defeat them. I would say that the High Elves are a very good faction for beginners, especially to start with some multiplayer matches, cause the quantity of controllable units is in the most cases quite comprehensible. And you have in the most cases a very good overview over the battle. So that is everything from the High Elves. I hope you enjoyed my faction guide over here. And as promised, right after, part 2 is following with the Dark Elves. So thank you for tuning in. Please let me know, write in the comments what you think about this. And yeah, see you on the Dark Elf faction guide and have a nice evening.